Welcome to the Geekverse. I'm Heath. If you're enjoying the videos, please like, subscribe, and consider joining us for the Morning Grind live streams each day. Together, we can be a very positive and constructive force in the Geekverse. Now let's get to it. So what are our feelings about this new Dungeons & Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves, especially in light of the resolution of the OGL controversy and how people may be feeling, or maybe their feelings have changed, about Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro? We've talked about this movie a few times on this channel, and actually I started talking about a Dungeons & Dragons movie and how I thought there didn't even need to be one long before I actually knew there was going to be a Dungeons & Dragons movie, because I had said, we've had mediocre Dungeons & Dragons film adaptations in the past, and I didn't personally see that changing all that much. I don't really need more mediocre general fantasy, and especially I didn't want to see some type of movie where they tried to make Dungeons & Dragons a movie where they're actually playing a game and then get sucked into the game. I just thought that would be terrible. That's a terrible way to go and way to ruin your movie right from the beginning. But then I saw that they are actually doing a new Dungeons & Dragons movie, and of course this seems to be part of Wizards of the Coast's new strategy to develop Dungeons & Dragons into a whole new franchise. And I did an analysis of the trailer on this channel before, and I said, well, okay, it doesn't look like they're doing something stupid like, hey, the kids are playing at the kitchen table and they get sucked into the game and now they've got to adventure to not only save the fantasy world, but also get back to their kitchen table or something like that. But I said, it looks like they've done something else that might also kind of screw up this movie. Now, I watched the trailer. I thought it looked very general and generic. People have told me that actually it does take place in the Forgotten Realms, because I was an advocate of developing different franchises off of the different fantasy worlds that Dungeons & Dragons is played in, like Forgotten Realms, like Dragonlance, for instance. Do those in a big way, rather than trying to make them Dungeons & Dragons brand. But I guess the people at Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are very Dungeons & Dragons focused. Dungeons & Dragons to me is the game. To me is the game. We play it in different worlds, and those are the worlds where the storytelling occurs. That's what I would have done. But I understand that at a high level, when you're talking to executives, they're not going to understand maybe Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance. They're going to say, wait a minute, doesn't this just need to say Dungeons & Dragons? And then try to start that. After I watched the trailer, someone in the comments, and it may have been a Rhino Watcher, was saying that, oh no, what they're trying to do is establish a new Marvel franchise. Marvel and everything they did with those movies worked in the past, let's say at least through Endgame, and then said, so someone is probably saying, can't we do exactly that kind of thing with Dungeons & Dragons? And so then when I went back and I watched the trailer again, I went, oh yeah, that makes sense. When thought about in that light, it does seem like what they're trying to do is make a Dungeons & Dragons movie and that franchise into a new Marvel movie. That's not something I'm particularly interested in. It takes a lot to get me out to the movie theater anyway. During the OGL controversy, when everything was going on with the leak of 1.2 and all of that was going on, of course, Boycott DnD was even trending on Twitter, and a lot of people were very angry and saying they were not going to go and see this movie anyway, or because of that. I don't really go see a whole lot of movies in the theaters right now anyway, because I live out in the country and it takes a while to get to a movie theater. So it takes a bit to really get me out to see a movie in the theater. I do go, but not to see as many movies as I used to. That's a downside to living in the country. So I probably wasn't going to go and see the Dungeons & Dragons movie anyway, because once again, it looked really generic and just not something that I was going to be interested in, not, what I wanted it to be. But then after all of that, I certainly was not going to go and see it. Actually, let me just say that I'm not going to go and see this movie for all of those reasons combined. Not something that would be on my watch list to go and see anyway. But how do I feel about its success? Well, in the past, I do strongly feel that even if some type of fantasy movie or science fiction movie or something in the Geekverse in general isn't specifically your thing, or, it may not be your particular books or movies or whatever that's being adapted, and you might not be particularly in the fan base, I still am in favor of these movies and TV shows doing well. And of course, we have a history, it seems like recently, of a lot of things not being done well. But I still want things to be done well, because when they are done well, it brings more people into the fantasy genre and the Geekverse in general, and it grows everything. It expands the pie and grows what we're trying to do. So my opinion of the Dungeons & Dragons movie, maybe 2 months ago, would have been, well, this is not the way that I would have done it. I don't think this is looking particularly spectacular. I'm kind of skeptical about their ability to do this movie well, but hey, I want it to go well. I want it to do very well, because I want more people to discover the genre. I want to bring more people in, and hey, if it does that, then great, even though it might not have been particularly my thing. But now, how do we feel about this in regard to the OGL situation? This seems to be another one of those instances where there's going to be this major movie coming out, or maybe major TV show, or whatever it is. In this case, major movie intended to become a major Marvel-like franchise. And the owners of the property decided to make their fan base absolutely furious, right in the lead up. You know, I'm still very upset at the way Wizards of the Coast has behaved. And we cover a lot of things on this channel. We've covered a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons, but predominantly we cover things that are other than Dungeons and Dragons anyway. And I know that a lot of people are moving on to other systems, are starting to develop other things. Thank goodness that we do have the 5e SRD, the 1.0a intact, also the Creative Commons license. So everybody who is published under that license can continue with publishing not only what they have published, but continue publishing their worlds and building on 5e. So of course, all of that kind of stuff, like independent friends and independent publishers and friends that have published some fantastic stuff, I of course do continue to support. But also, Wizards of the Coast hasn't been putting out books lately that I just felt like I had to have. I've been seeing a bunch of other things put out by other publishers. And I'm like, oh, well, now I need to get that. That looks really great. So the way that I've been drifting in general over the past months, but probably years, has been generally away from the stuff that Wizards of the Coast has published. Now, maybe they could hit a home run and bring me back. Maybe what happens, and I think this is very unlikely, but maybe what happens is that 6th edition is so good, or 1 D&D, or whatever they call it. Maybe it is just absolutely fantastic, especially if they decide that we're to develop our own rule system for 6th edition and not worry about 5th edition. Maybe it is just so fantastic that I have to play it. I mean, I'll check out the rules, I guess, but, it's got to be fantastic. It's got to be something really phenomenal to get me there. But on the other hand, maybe they don't care. Maybe they just want to be sure that all of the people who just want to go see a movie and then watch this and go, oh, cool, Dungeons and Dragons, that now they subscribe to 1D&D or D&D Beyond or whatever, and then do whatever that is. Maybe the tabletop role-playing game side of the Geekverse just kind of separates like this. But what do you think? I want to know. I kind of want to take a temperature reading of where the community is on this Dungeons and Dragons movie. Were you going to see it prior to the OGL crisis? Are you going to see it in light of it now? What do you think? Do you think they're going to be successful in establishing a Marvel-like franchise for Dungeons & Dragons? Let me know down in the comments. Let's see where we are as a community.